Well, my next guest is here to talk about something I'm pretty sure we've all experienced. It's that awkward moment when you're with someone who is grieving, your heart goes out to them, and you want to say something wise, profound, and comforting. But instead, you end up saying something inane, sensitive, or even trite. I know I've done it. And if that's you, we have help for you today. Nancy Guthrie is here to help us live out the compassion we're feeling with wisdom and insight. Nancy, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Cheryl.
You are an expert in grief. You share on the Grief Share videos, which are used in 10,000 churches across North America. You and your husband host respite weekends for couples who have lost a child. But unfortunately, the reason that you really became an expert was that you lived through some profound grief. You've lost 2 kids.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, my husband David and I have a son, Matt, who's 26. And 17 years ago, we had a daughter named Hope. And Hope was born with a rare metabolic disorder, something you've probably never heard of before, called Zellweger Syndrome. And what that meant was that she was missing a tiny subcellular particle that you and I have in every cell of our bodies. That's kind of like the cell's trash man that's responsible for taking out one kind of trash, long-chain fatty acids. And so because Hope was missing this tiny subcellular particle in every cell of her body, it meant that already a lot of damage had been done when she was born to all of her major organs, especially her liver and her kidneys and her brain. So that was very hard news to receive on her second day of life. You know, I had so looked forward to having a daughter who would grow old with me and be my friend in my old age. And so on her second day of life, we discovered that instead her life would be very short and very difficult. Hope couldn't see or hear, and she developed seizures at about 3 months, and we had to medicate her heavily for those. And she was with us for 199 days, and then we said goodbye to her.
And the thing I think that really broke my heart about your story is having gone through that once, then you have another child with the same disorder.
Yeah, you know, to have a child with that syndrome meant that my husband and I must both be carriers of the recessive gene trait for that syndrome. So when we had Hope, then we knew that anytime we have a child, that child would have a 25% chance of having the fatal syndrome. So we had a really difficult decision to make about whether or not we were going to have more children. And we took surgical steps to prevent another pregnancy. And evidently it didn't work. And so about 1.5 years after Hope died, I discovered that I was pregnant. And I've got to tell you, Cheryl, the competing emotions we felt in that moment, because there was a part of me that was, here's this thing that we ruled out, that God has clearly overruled. And perhaps it's because he's going to give us another child to raise and enjoy that we so wanted but didn't expect. But at the same time was this sick sense of fear. Like, maybe actually he's going to ask me to do this again. And so we went through prenatal testing, and we discovered that I was carrying a son that time, our son Gabriel, and he too was born with the fatal syndrome. So his life and his death was very much like Hope's. And for both of them, you know, I always feel like when I tell people that story, that what they imagine most about it is the pain and sorrow of it, which is very real. What's harder for you to imagine? Perhaps it was the joy of it. Because life made in the image of God is so precious and meaningful, and as limited as they were, just having them with us was a great joy. And so then when we were gone, they were gone. The sense of missing them and the emptiness was very significant.
I love that perspective. It's so beautiful. And I think, you know, a lot of people at the moment of even going through what you went through once may question or even lose their faith. Why would God allow? And then to allow it twice. Was there a testing of your faith through that? Did you come to peace with those questions?
Well, certainly there was the question, you know, because certainly the first time I sensed, well, I know from Scripture that God uses these things in the life of a believer. We think about Hebrews 12, when he talks about endure hardship as divine discipline. He's using this that there would be a harvest of right living. So I know it's purposeful, but I did kind of think, did I miss learning what I was supposed to, that I needed the remedial course? But I guess where I settled in, Cheryl, was a sense that God was in it. This didn't happen apart from him, that he was in it. And so what that did for me was I had the sense, if you're in this, Lord, and you want to do something with it, I know that what you want to do with it is good. What's happening might not be good, but I know it is for my ultimate good and for your greater glory. And so I just did the best I could to set my heart toward saying, God, if you're asking me to do this again, then use it. Use it in a significant way for your kingdom.
And I look at what you've done for people who are grieving, ministering to them and encouraging them. I can see that God's answering that prayer in your life. And you know, your latest book that you've done to minister to people is really talking about, and I think probably coming from that experience of how people didn't know how to be with you in your grief, how they didn't know how to speak to you in your grief. Even yourself, you said when you are trying to comfort other grieving people, you've said things that you regret.
Let me tell you, just last week I was at somebody's house who lost his wife, and I thought to myself, remember what you wrote, Nancy, because it can be so hard and awkward in those situations, can't it, to know what to say.
We want to fix it, right? We want to fix their pain, and we know that we can't. And so you don't even know what to do. So you talked to hundreds of people that have gone through grief, and you said what worked, what didn't. What was the most surprising thing that you heard?
Well, I think the thing that surprises other people, it doesn't surprise me so much anymore, is how much people really do want other people to keep talking about their loved one. So often we see someone, we know they lost someone, and maybe it seems like they're having a good day today. And we think, I don't want to make them sad. So we think, I better not bring it up because that will make them sad. When the reality is, they're already sad. Grief, I think of it sometimes like a computer program that's always running in the background, even if you don't see it. But for the grieving person, it's always running there in the background. And so when you have the courage and compassion to approach someone, you know they've lost someone, especially here at the holidays. Maybe it's that you realize this is going to be their first Christmas without that person who died. I promise you they're thinking about that. They're dreading a lot about that. So to go ahead and approach them and just say, I've been thinking about you as you face this first Christmas. And then the other thing they said, so they want you to bring it up, they want to hear that person's name. To hear that person's name who died, it's like a balm to their soul. And what it also does, it esteems that person. It warms their heart. So a significant thing was bring it up because they're thinking about it already anyway, and to say their name. And the other thing is, if they cry when you do bring it up, don't think you did something wrong, because that grief is running like a program in the background. And when you bring up the thing that's so precious to them, it allows them to release some of the tears. And I'll speak for me, and I know for so many other grieving people, there are so many tears inside that need to come out in the midst of grief. And when someone has the courage to bring up the person you love that you're missing so much, and it releases some tears, that's really a gift to you, to allow you to release some of those tears, to wash through some of that pain that's going on deep in your soul.
You gave so many great suggestions about what you can do. Things like helping to pay for expenses, or like you said, remembering anniversaries, first Christmases, birthdays, even years later. Just the way that people said, and you include so many examples of what people said, this meant the world to me. You also talked about things that we say that are stupid, that we shouldn't say. Things like, I guess God needed another angel in heaven.
Oh, don't ever say that.
Or this is God's will. Or, well, at least now you can have freedom to, or the pain will never go away. All these things. So what is wrong with these things? We're trying our best.
We are, right? Well, I think sometimes some of the things we say, we tend to think that sadness is a problem that it's up to us to fix. And that what that person really needs is to be cheered up. Or what that person really needs is to look on the bright side rather than only in their sadness. And what those things, the effect that those kind of things have, let's say, well, when you say to someone, well, at least you can get married again, or well, at least you can have more children. Okay, well, there's a lot in that. But one thing it's saying is, you really shouldn't be so sad. This isn't really that big of a deal. This is just a little blip in the road.
And you can replace one child with another or one spouse with another.
It diminishes the value of that person, and it diminishes the depth of their grief. So when we say those things, what we need to be thinking about instead, how can I elevate? How can I show great respect for, great regard for that person who died? Instead of saying it's not that big of a deal, to say, express in some way, this person was worth so much. And that must have left a huge hole in your life, a huge emptiness. And that means a lot to the person who loved that person as you seek to value them rather than diminish them with your words.
Well, there's so much more I want to unpack from your book, but we're going to run out of time. So I think what I really want to know, and as we look at this season, this time of year, it's such a tough time of year for people. It could be their first Christmas without someone. It could be their fifth, and that longing for them never goes away. Not everybody has a joyful Christmas.
No.
So as people are facing this holiday time, or they're facing these firsts this year, what is the best piece of advice you could give to grieving people?
Well, kind of goes back to what we've talked about, bring it up. You know, when you get a Christmas card from someone who's lost someone in their family, and there is someone missing from that Christmas card photo, give them a call and say, got your beautiful photo, but I realize someone's missing. And when I look at it, I miss him too. Maybe you would give them an ornament with that person's name engraved on it and tell them this, say, I got one for you, but I got one from my tree too, because we never want to forget them. You think about all the holiday parties. Call up that person. Let me tell you, crowds are so hard when you're grieving. So to call that person up and saying, maybe you don't want to go, but if you do, I'll come and pick you up. And I'll stick with you the whole time if conversations get awkward. And if you need to leave early, we'll leave early, to just offer that kind of companionship in the midst of the holidays. And then as we head into the new year, it's another good time to just make contact and say, you know, as we leave this year, I realize you're leaving the year that you last knew and enjoyed this person who died. And I just want you to know I'm thinking about you. And I'm praying that this new year for you will be a time that God will meet you in the loneliness that you feel right now.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for just your compassion and your heart and all you do to encourage people that are grieving. We loved having you here.
Thank you.
And if you want to check out Nancy Guthrie's book, it's What Grieving People Wish You Knew. And I just want to give you a reminder that over the holidays, our prayer lines are here 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We never go away. We are never not here, and we will never not pick up the phone. Whatever you're facing these holidays, you don't have to do it alone. We'd love to hear from you, listen to you, cry with you, pray with you. Just reach out and get the support that you need, because it is there for you.